Welcome, Dr. Ray. Thank you so much for being with us on the show today.
It's going to be amazing, and I appreciate this space that you put together for us to play and have a conversation in.
I am so happy and grateful that you're here. And for everybody listening, Dr. Ray and I have been friends for, oh my gosh, over a decade now, many years. And
Longer than that. Longer
longer
than
than
that.
that,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
flies
yeah.
by.
It might be like 15 years, almost, maybe more than that. I don't know.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, you're scaring me a little right now. Yeah, I think you could be right. And we really just followed each other on our journeys in this world and it's in this space. And it's just been so great to see the work that you have been doing. And I really wanted to have you on the show because you have come out with your very first book, which I mentioned in the introduction earlier. All it takes is one. And I am so impressed with it. It really is something very special because I feel like there are so many resources in the personal development world out there that are not warm and they don't really speak to somebody who might be just trying to figure things out or take those first steps in creating big change in their life and becoming happier and becoming a more dynamic, healthier, and energetic person. And when I wrote Operation Happiness, that was kind of one of my goals. I had searched for a book that would really resonate with me, that would feel personal and have stories, and I couldn't find it, so I wrote it. And I feel like you've done a little bit of the same here. Does that resonate?
Yes. While you're talking, I was about to say that. And it was this. So the coaching industry is saturated, and it's saturated with people who have just went to a weekend course or maybe a year of having some insight to where, there's a lot of healing that's needed on this planet. And more, I started without judgment, seeing subpar, information going out there to people reporting that they were taken advantage of in the coaching industry to where, this also where it started to become more about money. So you'll hear or see coaches, coaching coaches, and coaches, like this whole, like almost like multi-level
Yes.
marketing thing. And
Yeah.
so the book was written a way to where I could see the challenge, and I didn't want to complain about it because I didn't want to necessarily be putting myself out there and like I was cutting down my competition, because I don't see them as my competition, but more, how can I be the solution, and how can the solution be part of my work anyway? And so the book came from that space where, hey, I've been doing this for 30 years, and I've worked with some really good people, and I have been burned by people. And I want you to know what journey I went on, to how I was defensive, how I had to discern the teacher's message over his cantankerous personality, to all of those things. So if a person's in the beginning of their healing, it's all there. It's all spelled out with the steps of like how you began your journey and how you're going to meet people. You're going to go, oh my God, you're more messed up than I am.
Oh, that is so true because when you do start to really care for yourself and get into a journey to improve your life and create the life that you're dreaming of and envisioning, you really do start to notice the things in your life that are out of alignment, including many people. I remember when I went through my big transformation, gosh, it's probably 20 years ago now. I really noticed that a lot of things were falling away in my life once I became more about self-love and self-confidence and honoring what I know my value is and making my priorities in my life to take care of my health and well-being and go after my dreams and still be there for my friends and family at the highest level. When I really started trying to live that, and I'm still working on that, by the way, nobody is perfect in all those categories. I did notice that what was out of alignment became, it was almost like neon, like a neon signs glowing in my life of, wow, that doesn't fit anymore. And relationships fell away. And I noticed areas where I was in my own way that I needed to heal. Past traumas and past experiences came up that I didn't even realize were still with me, and I knew
Mhm.
that more healing needed to happen. And this is all what happens when people step into this journey that you have created this book for, to
Mhm.
guide people through this who are really interested. They know they want to go to the next level in their life. They know they want to be happier. Maybe they have a dream they want to go after and they're just not quite sure how to pull it all together to get started. This book really is such a great guide. And, I want to read just the subhead here because the book is called All It Takes Is One, but then it's drop your one big hidden belief and master your life. And
Mhm,
I love that you talk about how everybody has things that are getting that cause them to get in their own way.
mhm,
And a lot of times it's a hidden belief. And
mhm.
so I love that because when I first got this, when I first ordered it, I was like, oh, I need to know what my one big hidden belief is. I must have one. And so I just love that you dive right in right away before anybody even opens the book as to how they're going to benefit from reading it, which I think is so great. And so I wanted to chat about chapter one
Okay.
because chapter one is The Courage to Begin, a Step into the Unknown. Just the title of the chapter resonated with me, and it brought me back to like 20 something years ago when I really was stepping into the unknown. I had no idea the journey that I was about to go on. And I feel like so many people can relate to that. And by the way, it's not something that only happens to us once in our life, right? It's so
Right.
true.
Yeah. 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 It's
I
a
almost
process. Yep.
Yes, I almost feel like I'm kind of stepping into another version of that here in my 50s. And it is so true. It is a process. But once you've been through it one big time and you kind
Mhm.
of learn the skills and you learn how to handle it, then the next time it comes around and happens, you're like, oh, yeah, been here before.
Yeah.
Need to go back to Dr. Ray's book.
Well, already, like for example, your parents are transitioning and you're trying to get them into a facility. Well, you've never been here before. You have the skills though. So if you're dealing with staff that don't care and they're rude to you, if you had not done your work, you would be like saying, "Oh my God, what jerks," and whatever. But now you have the tools. You're recognizing, wait a minute. Maybe it's the industry too. Maybe I need to ask more questions to what is it about me that is taking it so personally? So
Yes.
once again, it's like, whoa, bringing it back to that. And
Boy,
and
I love that you brought that up because I think you're so right. A lot of people in Generation X and even millennials are dealing with aging parents right now. And
oh,
it is a very stressful thing, especially if you have aging parents that weren't entirely prepared for retirement, right? And you
mhm,
really have to do a lot of homework. It's, as I said earlier when we were chatting prior to the show, that it's almost a full-time job. And so that is another area where people might find themselves in their life stepping into the unknown and going through another personal transition and
mhm.
transformation. Because when you're helping a family member that you love so much, it also makes you reflect a lot on your own life. And I've been doing a lot of that. So you're so right. I probably need to reread some of this in relation in the context of what you just said.
Well, I know you want to read that chapter. That was or the section. That is why in that one section of the book where it goes through the main 11 influencers, and I talk about death because a lot of us don't have a healthy relationship to death. Therefore, when it does happen, and it's about to happen with a family member, if you haven't dealt with your own beliefs about it, it will be more of a struggle to watch your parent die. You won't know what to do with that. Then, secondly, if you have unhealed trauma with them, like they were abusive, oh, that's a whole other level. And so I've seen people deal with death in the most difficult way because number one, it hasn't made sense to them. Number two, they're waiting for an apology of a parent who just now died.
Oh my gosh, yes. And
It's
that whole thing of waiting for an apology that you're never going to receive is
Mhm.
so challenging to work around. You have to do so much self-healing in your heart. You have to accept the apology that you're never going to receive.
Yeah.
You have to find love around it. I actually wrote about this in my book as well because it's so true. And it's not just with parents, it's with past relationships, it's with
Mhm.
people, it's with adults that maybe didn't treat you right when you were a child. Like I
Yeah.
had teachers that I'm just like, oh my gosh, what was that teacher thinking? How they treated me? And so, yeah, that is a big one. So, anybody who's listening that is realizing that they have been hungry for an apology that they're likely never going to receive. There is
Mhm.
healing work you can do around that. And quite a bit of that is in Dr. Ray's book here. I love that you brought that up.
Well, the Western model will diagnose this as chronic grief. Chronic grief. So I'll tell you what, in a nutshell, chronic grief is. It's basically it's when you've complicated the process, you're overthinking it, you're waiting for an apology, you maybe got over the parent quicker than you thought you should, you're not crying, you're second guessing yourself. All these things can happen if death doesn't make sense to you, or the relationship you had with that loved one doesn't make sense to you. Therefore, the process itself, by how you're integrating it, has become complicated. Otherwise, complicated grief is not something onto itself. But we have a tendency to try to box people, and then that's it, rather than to ask that person, but what are you hanging on to? What's the secondary gain from not letting go of your parent? What responsibility do you not want to take, that you don't want to take, if you were just to let that go? And in the book there, it peels that wide open for us to ask those questions, so it's not so complicated and we start doing the healing now. Like you said, right now there's a lot of people, Gen Xers, that are now seeing their parents pass away, and they need to make decisions, and they need to heal these things within themselves first, so it's more effortless.
Yes. Oh, I love that you say that. And it's so true. There's so much inner working and inner healing that can be done through
Mhm.
this time in our lives. And it does make things a little bit easier and gives a lot of extra perspective to help you feel more grounded and even more clear-headed, because it is so easy. Like what I've been going through the last few months, there have been times when I needed to just ground myself and do some breath work and gain some clarity and do some
Mhm.
work to, and then revelations would come. I would be like, oh, here's how to handle that thing, or here's how to handle that situation. But when you get overwhelmed and you get caught up in the
Mhm.
feelings of you're waiting for apologies, or something traumatized you years ago that you haven't resolved, or you've got things in the moment that are very stressful that are overwhelming you, learning to take those pauses and going within is so valuable.
Mhm.
So valuable. Love that you said that. Um, and that being said, it's so the very first paragraph of your book had me laughing like immediately. And when a book can have me laughing and relating right away, right out of the gate, I know I'm going to love it. And so that's one more thing I want to say about your book as I went through it, just how relatable it is. You are a doctor, right? And
Mhm.
an excellent doctor and an amazing coach. But yet at the same time, people don't know this about you, but if I might say, you are a very funny guy with a dry sense of humor. And you tell it like it is. And I think more and more people today so appreciate that, especially with, like you were talking about earlier, all the noise on social media, all the misinformation, all the toxic positivity. You actually tell it like it is. You're straight and real with people. And there's
Mhm.
something just so refreshing about that. And I try to align myself with that all the time in everything I do. And I think it's so important because you're right. There is a lot of misinformation out there and things that can steer people the wrong way. But I just want to read everybody this first paragraph because this will open us up to the next part of our conversation here. So this is in chapter 1, The Courage to Begin, A Step into the Unknown. Mary sought my coaching due to her anxiety in new social environments and around large crowds. On the day of her initial appointment, she called me from her car parked outside my building, expressing her apprehension and proposing a reschedule. I softly reminded her that this was the exact issue she wanted to address.
Yes.
Conceding to my point, she agreed to a meeting in the park across from my office. I love that. And I was just laughing because everyone can relate to that. It's so true how sometimes we tend to get in our own way with the exact behavior that we're trying to heal.
Yes. Yes.
Love you to expand a little more on that, because I think so many people listening can really dive deep into this and go, oh, yeah, I totally did that. Or, oh, I'm doing that right now in this area. I think it's so relatable.
Yes. So I have probably been on over 22,000. By the way, I don't know how I came up with that number, but I remember calculating like how I used to work, how much I used to work, but discovery calls, and that's where you figure out whether or not this client is aligned with you or not. And the clients who brought up that they would procrastinate, to they self-sabotage, uh, to they lack self-care, or they're people pleasers. There have been many situations where on their way to me, someone is reaching out to them at 4 p.m. at LAX, the worst time to travel out there, and that prospective client, because I don't end up working with them, or on their way to me, they send me a message and say, "Hey, something came up." again. Strangely, one might say, I have this unhealthy relationship with my mother, and I'm trying to create some healthy boundaries. I get an email a couple days before the session. Oh, I have to cancel the session due to finances. I respond back, can you let me know more about that? Oh, my mother slipped and I have to pay for this. And so you'll see this show up, and where a person will just self-sabotage, and it's unconscious, and it will happen on their journey towards being healed.
Oh, I love that you say that, the journey toward being healed. And if we can know when we catch ourselves doing this, that, oh, this is part of my journey toward being healed, and
Yes, yeah.
I need to recognize this, that's actually empowering. That's an empowering way to look at it, which I love. And
Mhm.
I like to say often, ask yourself this question when you find yourself making, giving reasons for why you can't do this or that, a thing that really should be a priority to you, right? When you find yourself giving reasons, take a step back and ask yourself, is this actually a reason or is it an excuse?
Yes.
Because so many times excuses can sound, we convince ourselves that the excuse is a valid reason, right?
Mhm.
But no, there's a big difference between a reason and an excuse. And when we can self-examine our own behavior and really decide, like, a reason might be, I was in an accident on the way to the airport and my car is totaled. I'm okay, but I don't have transportation right now. That's a pretty good reason. But
Mhm.
if you're like, oh, there's traffic and I didn't leave early enough and darn, I'm not going to make it on time, that's kind of an excuse. It's like you
Yes.
were not prioritizing what you wanted. And so when we learn to recognize it in ourselves, isn't that like so empowering? And that really goes along with what you're talking about here with where to begin when you want to start your transformation journey, right?
Yes, it's why I talk a lot about taking personal responsibility, because I have this experience often with my girlfriend, and she's a coach. She's been coaching for 20 years, but it's a different way of looking at things. But she's shifted a lot, but it would be where she would tell me a reason why it didn't happen. It could be there's some story, and I will always respond with I hear her and I'm empathetic, but I will respond back with, and then what? And what are you going to do? And then what? Because almost every time you can go left or right again. Like there's another choice, there's another decision. And that's
Yeah.
how I've created my life, the life that I live. Like I don't, if the situation says no, if I'm blocked, I know there's a creative way to move around that. However, if it were to happen, say like 3 times, I step back, I take pause, and it might be that I'm not supposed to go that way. And that is the feedback of that is for me to, that's helping me better my life. And so therefore, sometimes what we perceive as resistance or like, darn, uh, this got in the way again, could be, I know this kind of contradicts what we just shared. It could be the universe saying that no, there's a better way. So that can happen also. However, the way that we discern that is this: does it feel good? I mean,
Yeah.
if it's a logical choice, if you're efforting yourself to go in that direction, there's probably still resistance. However, if it's just like, wait a minute, that feels better, there's a good chance that this new direction is aligned with your healing and your soul.
Oh my gosh, I love that you say that. Our bodies and our souls and our hearts are our
Mhm.
biggest guides. They tell us, and if we just take the time to tune in and feel like,
Mhm.
how do I feel about this?
Mhm.
How does this feel? That's
Mhm.
how we know we're in alignment or not in alignment. Sometimes
Yes.
we have a tendency to keep going with something and pushing for something, even though if we really tune into ourselves, we would realize how off it is, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
Well, I know that we're in a time, I know I might be digressing a little bit, but we're in a time in history where there's a lot of misinformation to different perspectives. So people are bombarded with information and don't know what to do with it, but they're coming from the perspective of, I need to know it here versus how does it feel? What is my heart saying to this? Does it align with my true values? We got to get back to who we really are to make decisions.
Yes, I love that. And I think more than ever that is needed because we are in such an overwhelming state right now with information flying at us from every
Mhm.
single angle, people expecting instant responses from texts and emails. It is such an overwhelming world for everybody. And I think learning to go within and self-reflect and ask ourselves what our souls truly want and what's in alignment, and taking that time. For me, I will tell you, breath work this last few months has been a lifesaver because I can lay down and do 2 minutes of just connecting with my breath, connecting with my heart,
Mhm.
and feel like a new person and feel reconnected again. Because it is easy in this world, especially when you're an entrepreneur or when you're working at your career or when you're handling aging parents or whatever it is that's on your plate, to get overwhelmed with everything. So I love the way you put that.
I want to say something because I don't know if any of your other guests say this on your podcasts, and it's this. Christy is one of the most amazing human beings I know, and she was so helpful and helped me with my book launch. She really went out of her way, and she did this during a time when she had challenges that she didn't know what to do uh, with, meaning like elderly parents. And so the way she showed up is everything. And Chrissy, right now, and when you said in real time that I'm relatable and that tell it how it is, you do the same thing. The way that you eloquently uh, share information, it's very clear and it's just very simple to digest. And I know some people want things fluffy. I know some people, they don't want the truth, but I know that you're a truth seeker and you do share from your heart. And so you're very consistent with that. So when you communicate also, it inspires me. And so when you were talking about me, I feel as though you were talking to the mirror.
Well, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed right now. That was so sweet. Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
so appreciate that. That was not expected, but thank you. And yeah, I just think the world of you as well. I'm so grateful to be able to have this conversation and many great conversations with you. Thank you so much. And yes, I do really believe in this world that I want to be aligned with truth and with real information and with the spiritual, both the spiritual and the practical side of science, and what truly works to help us feel grounded and good in this world. And I love that you brought up earlier, look at how you feel about something because
Mhm.
that's how you know it's aligned. Take the time. And another tip I like to share is when you wake up in the morning, ask yourself, don't just dive right into the day and look at emails and what everybody's going to need from you, but ask yourself, how do I want to feel
Mhm.
today? And then align your day with how you want to feel. That is how you design a life that where you feel the way you want to feel more of the time.
Yes.
So
But
important.
by the way, you talked about the humor. It's strange now as I gotten older and my voice has gotten maybe deeper and I'm closer to the age in which I remember my father. And my father was hilarious. And so I know there are a lot of people who like Bill Burr, and there are probably a lot of people who don't. The things I like about Bill Burr is he's really sharp. He tells it how it is. And it's like when he shares his comedy, he's not necessarily, he'll say something about the left and a right. He's kind of like more in the middle ground, kind of saying that you're all full of shit, like own this truth. And so he's very relatable. And I think the people who like him, that's why they like him. Those who don't like them, they might not like his swearing or his bluntness, or even he does sound very angry, but he is a relatable guy. And so, I would pay tribute to my father for that because he was always a straight shooter. And I spent a lot of work trying to curtail my swearing because not on, it's like, for example, when we get off this call here, there's going to be some F bombs that come out of me, okay? Uh, let's just say that, like, even how I show up on video, it's not always how I am, meaning that this is truly who I am, but I just don't swear as much like I do behind closed doors, but I like to have a good time.
You
I
know,
like
I love that you say that. Like the F
yeah.
word, by the way, is one of my favorite words. And
Okay.
it's so funny because there is one actually in Operation Happiness. It's in a very humorous way, but I actually have been in a couple of settings where
Mhm.
like, I would be at a corporation and they're buying copies of the book for all their major executives. And I'm like, just so you know, there's one or two swear words in there. So gotta let them know. But it's part of being real. And do you know there's actually a scientific study? I can't remember which organization did it now, but that said that people who swear
Mhm.
somewhat often tend to be more intelligent. So I'll take it. I
Yeah,
think it's a great relief of stress too.
yes, and here's the thing, my son, who's going to be 10 in July, he swears a little bit behind closed doors, but he never does it at school. So he's really good. He knows about social security on a whole other level, but the moment he meets another adult who's maybe from New York, or he's aware that he hears that adult swears also, he will sometimes match it. I'm like, oh my God. I cringe, but I also recognize like it's not a bad thing. But my son is very funny also, really funny. And it's a trip when he communicates and he sounds like my father.
Oh, wow.
It is a trip. It is a trip.
I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that have kids that can relate to that a little bit. That's amazing.
Oh, it's a beautiful, and it's like, again, it's like it could sound judgmental, but there's truth in this. I mean, I'm just going to share it. So, as an example, we're driving down the road, and like this kid runs across the street while there's a lot of cars coming. And it's not an intersection, it's not a crosswalk, it's just him darting. And the kid was probably early 20s. He drops his paper, he stops in the middle of the road without even looking to where, and he goes and he steps down and picks it up to where all the cars have to slow down.
That's
And
frightening.
it comes out of my son's mouth. He goes, "What a fucking idiot. He could have got killed." It's true.
Oh, yeah, it
Okay.
is true. It's a matter of
Yeah.
fact.
Yes. Yeah. And then I said, Max, I said, pretty observant. I said, how would you have done that differently? He said, first off, he says, I probably would have used the crosswalk, or if I were to run across the road, I would make sure that I had more time. I said, well, what about the dropping of papers? He said, I would have just got them later after the cars passed by. I don't want to get killed. I'm like, wow. I mean, I was so proud of him. I'm like, so I break things apart with him. So he really
Yeah.
knows a lot about life. I mean, almost every moment is a coaching or a teaching moment with us. So he breaks things down. However, if a parent believes a belief system that a kid shouldn't swear, or that it sounds judgmental, then it's a question to ask parents out there is then like when do children get feedback? Because here's the thing, I like who I am, and no, I'm not a narcissist. I like who I am, and I know a lot of healthy adults who have come from like poverty or neglect and or other challenges. They are where they are through feedback,
Yeah.
through honest feedback, which is a big part in the beginning of the book also. So if I were to see that kid, like me, and I was an adult who was on the other side of the road that he was running to or running towards, I would say it to him. I said, dude, do you want to get hit?
Yeah.
Now, someone might say, oh my God, it sounds so unkind. I would say, okay, what would you prefer? Uh, Me being like speaking very soft or accepting that, or having a dead child?
Right, right. Because
So
there are lessons that have to sometimes be learned a little bit of a hard way. All
tough
right.
love, absolutely. So I don't know why I digress in that direction, but there you go.
Well, that transitions us into the last question I wanted to ask you, but you're so right because sometimes in life, feedback is not always in a pretty package.
Mhm.
Some-
Yeah.
right? Sometimes it comes in the form of a smack in the face or, like, oh my gosh, a few months ago, I was so angry about something and that's very rare for me. I rarely get angry, but I think things had just been building up and I went stomping into my office and I tripped on the carpet with a bare foot and broke my toe.
Okay.
And it was terribly painful. But immediately I saw the lesson. I was
Hmm.
like, this is what happens. This was feedback, right? This was the universe going, slow down, calm your nervous system, be careful not to hurt yourself. It really was a good reminder for me. And thankfully it healed easily and pretty quickly, but it wasn't a pretty package. Let me tell you, it was a painful lesson to learn, but I since then have been much more mindful. It has, as you said earlier, I have been going through my own sort of life challenges the last few months, but I welcome the opportunity to learn and to get the feedback. So I do love that in chapter 1, you talk about resistance to feedback, because this
Hmm.
kind of ties in what I wanted to share with everybody listening today, that one of the first things that is really great to work on, and by the way, I'm still working on it all these years later, like it's an ongoing thing, is learning to recognize when we're kind of, as I mentioned earlier, like in our own way. But when
Hmm.
it comes to not recognizing feedback or being resistant to feedback, because usually, not always, but usually when feedback comes our way, when someone tries to tell us something, or a sign like me breaking my toe because I was in too much of a haste tries to tell us something, sometimes we tend to skate over it or ignore it or shove it off or
Hmm.
even be offended by it.
Hmm.
And that is inner resistance coming up to what life is trying to teach us. So I would love for you to share a little bit of insight about how everyone can kind of learn to recognize resistance to feedback within themselves, and what's something maybe they can do to shift that, like a quick shift so that they can
Okay.
change perspective.
Well, I'm gonna give you something that happened this week with my girlfriend, who's a coach, and I'm gonna share with you how she processed it and ways that people listening to this can as well. So Nicole is really skinny, like on the skinnier side. She's a yogini, so she also eats healthy, but she's one of those people that would probably say never get fat. And but I also, it's just my opinion that uh, I I believe that she could probably eat more protein, okay? So I joked with her about something because she came in through the door and she like was eating really early, like it was like 3 o'clock. And she said, "This is all I brought." I said, "This is gonna last you until the next day." And I made a joke. I said something I forgot. I said, "Well," I said something about, "Yeah, I think maybe you need to eat a little bit more." And she got defensive. She did get defensive. She says, "Well, it's you've said it a couple times, and I wonder if there's a problem here." And then she got really emotional, and she walked outside my door, and she sat there for about 10 minutes, and I did a cold plunge, and it sounds like a hippie couple or whatever. I came back out. That was just my way of grounding myself, but I just wanted to anyway. It was really hot, and she said, "I just recognized something." She said, "My mother used to be told by other mothers that I wasn't eating enough." And she said, "It's not my story." And to where I took it through a negative lens, which is why in a book I talk about you need to break down why you've come to believe these certain things, because it might not be your belief. So back to my girlfriend, she said that it's like I've heard this my entire life, and and she was sharing that, like, and so
Wow,
she
that's
wanted me maybe
powerful.
to stop, and I received that. However, I shared this also. I said, "You're aware that I grew up with a father who grew up with a lot of Italians, right?" And I said, "And all they want to do is feed you." I go, and I said, "Are you aware of the whole, uh, say, uh, the Jewish grandmother, like where they just when you come over, they think you're too skinny and they want you to eat." And she's like, "Yes." I said, "Well, my mother was that way also. And if you were to come to my house, she would say you don't eat enough." I said, "What if I say that because I just I just say that. It's not negative.
Right,
It's
it's out of
more like
love. It's
it's
out
out
of
of
love.
love."
Yes.
Yes, it's out of love. I go, "So you have your belief of what it means to you. My belief is that it means I love you, and I'll buy you dinner."
Oh, see, I love
Yeah,
I love
yeah,
that you
yeah,
clarify that. It is
yeah,
really
yeah,
the story we tell ourselves about
yeah,
things.
yeah. Yeah, and then this is the other part. I said, "But this is something you can disagree with." By the way, it's not like I walk up to my girlfriend, "You believe this and not this." It's no,
Right, right. No.
it's an open dialogue. So for brevity's sake, I'm just sharing it this way for listeners to understand this. Um, I said, this is another thing. I said, remember, I have been bodybuilding since I was 11. I literally have pictures where I was pretty muscular. At this moment, I said, I probably have a tinge of body dysmorphia. I said, I haven't been able to work out. So even I look at my body that I'm losing muscle mass really quickly. I am still a student to all of this. I said, however, I come from that lens of always eating protein, and I might project that onto you. And I said, so you can tell me I'm full of shit, that, or you can understand that my belief comes from that perspective that's not yours. And therefore you can disagree. It doesn't matter. But remember, if I'm sharing this information like a loving Jewish grandmother or from that bodybuilder's perspective, do you understand? It's neutral. It's neutral. So that's an example of someone getting defensive at first and then doing the inner work. Now, as far as for listeners here, it would be this. What am I saying to myself about what I just heard? What am I saying to myself about what I just heard?
Right.
Why
What's the
am I
story I'm
making
telling
meaning?
myself?
And
Yes.
typically it's going to be a negative thing. You know, I'm too fat, I'm this, I'm not good enough. Why would I be saying that about myself? Why would I be saying that about myself? Two, how have I been feeling about myself today? Have I been saying loving things or hateful things? Have I heard other people talk in negative ways where I've taken that on and it's in my body? There's many ways to explore why we feel a certain way, but taking personal responsibility is turning inward to asking those questions. Why would I allow myself to feel this way? How have I been feeling? To how do I really want to feel anyway? What if that person actually is a fucking jerk? All right. Our first F-bomb in there. What
Hey,
if that
some
person,
are. I don't think
yeah,
that's
yeah,
our
yeah,
first F-bomb, by the way.
yeah. And so it's like, so what? You know,
Yes.
so effing what? That's
Yeah.
okay. So how do I want to enjoy my day anyway? Or if you were to say I can't because this guy was a jerk, then you have to also be honest and say, well, I guess I'm choosing to be, codependent on what he does or doesn't do, which doesn't feel good. So,
Yes. Oh my gosh. And I have to say, I have been guilty of that one many times in my life. And it's not a healthy place to be, because when you realize that you're the one kind of being the jerk now to yourself and in
yes,
a situation, then you can have a tendency to get even more jerky and more angry, and it's a cycle. So learning to stop that and recognizing it. And then when you do, for me, I've learned now to just laugh at the silliness of it. Like, oh, I'm being
yes,
really silly right now. That will snap you out of it.
absolutely.
Anytime, taking a breath. And like you said, I love that you talk about personal responsibility. I love to say personal responsibility is power.
Hmm.
It will change everything. It's a game changer. It will change your life. When you start to take responsibility for your own feelings, for your own stories, that is really, really a great place to start when it comes to any
Yeah.
kind of transformation.
It is not our business to take responsibility for what that person said. It's not our business to try to make sense about what that person said. It's not our responsibility to think about how it could have been different. It's not our responsibility to figure out about other ways of how he or she should have said it differently. It's our responsibility to choose how we want to feel after the fact.
Yes. Yes. That's where all the power is.
Yes.
Absolutely. That's so big. I think we can kind of look toward wrapping up now. I think that's like mic
Yes.
drop moment right there. That was amazing. So my goal with today's episode was to give everybody just a little bit of some food for thought about where to get started with transformation. In addition to, of course, grabbing a copy of your book. All it takes is one. Drop your one big hidden belief and master your life, from Dr. Ray Doktor. And by the way, I want to just point out on a funny note, your last name really is Doktor, Doktor, and you
Yes.
are a doctor. So the irony
Yes.
of that is so much fun. I love it. But of course, affectionately known as Dr. Ray by most, right?
Yes, yes. It's actually Doktor, but I don't ever correct people, and nor do I correct myself. It just sounds cool and it's a lot easier.
Yeah, I've always heard you pronounce it that way. That's really interesting. Yeah. So, but I love that. So thank you so much for being with me, my friend. I appreciate you so much. And I love, love, love the book. I hope everybody grabs a copy.
By the way, I'm sorry. So you have no idea the experience I had taking that picture for the book.
For the
I
cover?
haven't shared this. Oh, it was so where I live in Ashland, Oregon, there are interesting artistic people here where you might think are either not judging, a little awkward, and do strange things. So I go to this person's apartment and he has a lighting set up, and I shit you not. I don't know if this is the music to get him into his flow to take pictures, but I'll tell you this. When I take a picture, I want to look vibrant, attractive. And typically that's by the photographer showing his energy as well. He was playing the Charlie Brown theme song in the background while taking pictures.
Were you bobbing up and down?
I was like, I was just going through this thought of like, you've got to be joking. Like, but I put aside like his choice of music, and I just, I turned it inward to turn it into comedy. But yes, he was just, I forgot that. It was just that, it was a Charlie Brown theme song.
You
So
know,
there you go.
that is a cute story. And now that you're saying that, I can actually see in your face a little bit of humor there behind your eyes, which
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love. Maybe he gets credit for bringing that out of you because it's a great picture.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. That was great to end the show with a laugh. And thanks to everybody who's tuned in. I love and appreciate you all. And thank you, Dr. Ray, and amazing, amazing job with the book. It is now a bestseller. And thanks for being with us on the show.
Thank you for helping.